Most people think manipulation looks obvious. A liar, a fake smile, a toxic person trying to control you. But real manipulation is quieter than that. It sounds like concern. It looks like love. It hides inside guilt, pressure, approval, attention, fear, compliments, silence, even kindness. And the dangerous part? Most people don't realize they're being manipulated until they no longer feel like themselves. One day you suddenly notice you apologize too much. You over-explain everything. You feel guilty for saying no. You constantly need validation. You fear disappointing people. You start shrinking your personality just to keep peace. That is not weakness. That is conditioning. And once someone learns your emotional triggers, they can control your decisions without force. That's why emotionally intelligent people don't just learn communication, they learn defense. Because in this world, if you don't understand manipulation, you become easy to control. And the people who manipulate best usually never raise their voice. They study emotions, patterns, insecurities, loneliness, attention hunger. They know exactly what to say to make people doubt themselves. But today, that ends. Because this video is not just about manipulation. It's about becoming mentally untouchable. Not cold, not toxic, not emotionless. Just impossible to control. And once you understand these psychological tactics, you will never see people the same way again. Because manipulation only works in darkness. Awareness destroys it. The first manipulation tactic is guilt, and this one destroys millions of people without them realizing it. Manipulators rarely force you directly. Instead, they make you feel bad for protecting yourself. They say things like, "Oh wow, you changed. I guess I just care more than you do. After everything I did for you, you're too sensitive. You're selfish." Notice something? They don't address the issue. They attack your emotions. Because guilt is one of the fastest ways to control human behavior. Psychologists discovered that humans are deeply wired to avoid social rejection. Your brain literally treats emotional rejection like physical pain. That's why guilt manipulation feels so heavy, and manipulators know this. So instead of respecting your boundaries, they punish you emotionally until you surrender. The moment you start feeling guilty for saying no, your freedom disappears. Mentally strong people understand something powerful. Guilt is not always proof you're wrong. Sometimes it's proof you finally stopped being easy to control. And this is where most people fail. They keep explaining themselves. Over-explaining is one of the biggest signs someone can emotionally control you, because every extra explanation sounds like permission-seeking. Confident people don't write emotional essays to justify boundaries. No is a complete sentence. And manipulators hate emotion. Stable people, because stable people do not panic under pressure. That's another secret. Manipulators survive on emotional reactions. If they can make you angry, they control the conversation. If they can make you defensive, they control your focus. If they can make you emotional, they control your clarity. That's why emotionally dangerous people stay calm while you react. Because the person controlling emotions usually controls the situation. There's a famous psychological principle: whoever reacts less often holds more power. Think about that carefully. Manipulators want urgency, emotion, chaos, instant reactions. Powerful people pause. They observe first. And observation is deadly to manipulators. Because manipulators rely on unconscious behavior. The moment you become aware, their control weakens. One of the oldest manipulation tactics is called gaslighting, and it's terrifying because it attacks your reality itself. It sounds like, "That never happened." You're imagining things. You always overreact. You're crazy. You misunderstood. At first, it seems small, but over time, it creates self-doubt. And once people doubt themselves, they become easier to control. That's why manipulators repeat confusion until you stop trusting your own instincts. And the scary part? Many intelligent people still fall for this, because manipulation is not about intelligence. It's about emotional vulnerability. A lonely person can be manipulated with attention. An insecure person can be manipulated with approval. An emotional person can be manipulated with guilt. A fearful person can be manipulated with pressure. Everyone has a psychological entry point. That's why self-awareness is protection. The better you know yourself, the harder you are to control. Manipulators search for emotional hunger, people-pleasing, validation addiction, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment. Because if your happiness depends on external approval, someone else controls your emotions. That's why emotionally powerful people stop chasing approval. The moment you stop needing everyone to like you, manipulation loses power. And here's something most people never realize. Manipulators often test boundaries slowly, not aggressively. Slowly. A disrespectful joke, a small lie, a little guilt, tiny pressure. They study your tolerance, because small, tolerated disrespect becomes future permission. That's why confident people address small disrespect early, not emotionally, calmly. People think strength means aggression, but real power is calm enforcement. No shouting, no drama, no begging, just clarity. Weak manipulators fear clear people, because clear people are difficult to confuse, and confusion is a manipulator's favorite weapon. There's another dangerous tactic called love bombing. This is when someone gives extreme attention, validation, affection, compliments, or emotional intensity very quickly. At first, it feels amazing. You feel chosen, special, important. But often it's not connection, it's dependency creation. Because once someone becomes emotionally dependent, control becomes easier. The manipulator creates emotional highs, then suddenly withdraws attention. Now the victim chases approval again. This creates psychological addiction. Hot and cold behavior is one of the oldest emotional control tactics in human psychology. Your brain becomes obsessed trying to win back validation. That's why emotionally intelligent people pay attention to consistency, not intensity. Anyone can create emotional fireworks temporarily. Consistency reveals true character. And this next lesson may be the most important one in the entire video. Manipulators hate silence, because silence interrupts emotional control. When manipulative people expect emotional reactions and receive calm silence instead, they lose psychological leverage. That's why silence feels powerful. Not because silence is magic, because silence forces manipulators to face uncertainty, and uncertainty weakens control. This doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means learning emotional discipline. There's a massive difference. Emotionally weak people react instantly. Emotionally strong people respond intentionally. That single difference changes everything. And here's the truth nobody tells you. Some people will become angry the moment you stop being easy to manipulate. Not because you changed negatively, because your boundaries removed their access. The version of you that always said yes benefited them. The version of you with standards threatens them. And this is where many people make a mistake. They think being nice keeps relationships healthy. No. Respect keeps relationships healthy. And respect without boundaries does not exist. One psychological study found that people who constantly seek approval are perceived as easier to pressure. and influence socially. Why? Because desperate energy communicates fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of losing people. Manipulators detect emotional desperation instantly. That's why inner stability is dangerous to toxic people. A person who can walk away calmly becomes extremely difficult to control. And walking away is psychological power. Because manipulators survive on access. Access to your attention, access to your emotions, access to your reactions. Remove the access, and their influence collapses. Now let's talk about reverse manipulation, not to become toxic, but to protect yourself intelligently. One of the strongest defensive techniques is strategic questioning. Manipulators hate explaining themselves clearly, so instead of defending emotionally, ask calm questions. What exactly do you mean by that? Why did you say that? Can you explain the logic behind that? Why are you making this my responsibility? Questions expose hidden intentions. Manipulators prefer emotional fog. Questions create clarity, and clarity destroys manipulation. Another powerful defense is emotional non-reactivity. This does not mean suppressing emotions. It means refusing to give manipulators instant emotional access. Remember this carefully. Not every accusation deserves defense. Not every insult deserves reaction. Not every provocation deserves attention. Your attention is psychological currency. Stop giving it away cheaply. One of the most powerful traits you can develop is emotional self-trust, because manipulators succeed when you stop trusting your own judgment. So rebuild your inner voice. If something feels wrong repeatedly, pay attention. Your nervous system notices danger before your logic does, and emotionally intelligent people understand another dark truth. Charm is not character. Confidence is not honesty. Attention is not love. Words are not intentions. That's why wise people study patterns, not promises. Patterns reveal truth, always. If someone repeatedly lies, pressures, guilt trips, confuses, or disrespects boundaries, believe the pattern, not the apology. And maybe the most dangerous manipulation of all is making you believe you are difficult for having standards. Listen carefully. You are not difficult for protecting your peace. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not cold for creating boundaries. You are not rude for refusing disrespect. And you are not weak for walking away from manipulation. In fact, walking away from emotional control is one of the strongest things a person can do. Because manipulation only survives where self-worth is weak. The moment your self-respect becomes stronger than your fear of losing people, your entire life changes. You stop begging for understanding. You stop chasing validation. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop shrinking yourself for comfort. And suddenly, manipulative people no longer feel powerful around you. Because they cannot control someone who is emotionally grounded. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become aware. Aware of guilt, aware of pressure, aware of emotional traps, aware of fake intentions, aware of manipulation disguised as love. Because awareness creates freedom, and freedom creates power. Real power is not controlling others. Real power is controlling yourself so completely that nobody else can control you. And once you master that, you become dangerous in the most peaceful way possible.